So I studied computer science at university. I was always really interested in programming. And after I finished uni, I went to work for a publisher and I was writing code there. And very quickly, I found that actually it was as interesting to write the code as it was to understand why the code needed to be written and what people were really looking for when they were asking for things to be done. So I stayed there for quite a while and started doing a lot of changes around how the code was used, what we wanted to do, what customers wanted, what the business wanted, and just driving through change in that way. This was the really interesting time in publishing because magazines were starting to disappear and everybody was going online. So basically, the entire business had to shift the way in which they were thinking about how everything happened. From there, I went to work at a couple of startups, tried different things. And then one of the startups I worked at was acquired by Salesforce, which is where I discovered Salesforce. I hadn't really used it a huge amount before then. And I then spent 8 years at Salesforce working through different bits and pieces and always trying to understand how the tech fit in, but also what it meant for customers. So understanding if the tech can do this, then what's the impact for a business case? Or on the other side, if a customer wants something to happen in a specific way, what's the tech impact for that? And that's what I bring to Double Edge marketing, understanding what's doable, what's not doable, or maybe what's going to be cheap and what's going to be expensive. So when you think about any system that we use, there's a thing in software development where you can choose to make something cheap and fast, or fast and good, or good and cheap. But whatever you pick, you're going to lose on one of those things. So if you think about, for example, a demand side platform that you use to buy ads, its main thing is that it's cheap and fast. It's not good. DSPs lose data all the time. And you can see that when you're retargeting segments, for example, not as big as you think they should be. Or if you look at the discrepancies between what you've purchased versus the ads that ran. But that makes sense because it makes the numbers work for everybody involved. And that's what makes the technology possible. There are other things that people will do. So some other systems, for instance, might be good and cheap, but not fast. And actually, a lot of CDPs fit in that scenario where they are able to deal with lots of data really cheaply and be really accurate in what they do, but they're not super fast at it. And people always say that, oh, but I want it in real time. It's like, that's cool. You can do it in real time. However, from an architecture point of view and an IT point of view, there is going to be an impact on cost. Now, we see vendors reacting to that differently. Some of them just don't provide a fast path. We were talking about Salesforce before. If you look at Data 360, very often there is a real time versus a batched pricing. And so if you choose to go to the fast path that will get you results in milliseconds when you're doing something like building a segment, then the cost is 20, 30 times higher. You've lost the cheap, but you've gained the fast. And so that's the balance that you always have to strike. And so some people will say, oh, I want everything to be in real time. And at that stage, we have to go, well, is it worth the cost associated with that? So let's say, for example, you are selling car insurance. The really interesting thing about car insurance is that people come back once a year, right? When you register your car, you buy a car insurance, which means that if you are doing personalization for an organization that is selling car insurance, you have one chance a year to upsell or change what the customer is buying. And then they're locked in for an extra entire 12 months. And so your system needs to be able to very quickly get the details of who you are when you come in to register it. And it's going to be a record that it hasn't seen in 11 months and 2 weeks because you generally renew your insurance about 2 weeks out from when it's due. Interestingly, it doesn't necessarily have to be done fast because you know it's coming. You know that you've sent out a bunch of renewal notices to people and they're going to come back to do something, but you need to have that surfaced at that stage. And that's where you have that challenge between fast versus cheap versus is it going to be good? Yeah. Look, finding the right solution for someone is really like solving a puzzle. And that's why I enjoy it so much because I do like solving puzzles. It's about making sure that we are lining up with what the customer needs. So how do we deliver as many of the items that a customer wants for a price that is acceptable to them using a technology that they have or close to what they have so that they don't need to purchase every single software stack in the world to make it happen. And then it just becomes a question of how much do I have to include, not include, and what are the use cases that we potentially have some movement on? We can say, for instance, this thing that you want to do in real time, to the example before, maybe instead we'll do it once an hour. And sometimes it doesn't matter, right? If you're sending a survey 1 week after an event, it doesn't matter whether that's done in batch or real time. So you may as well go for the option that's going to cost the least because if it's 1 week and 1 second versus 1 week and 15 minutes, it really doesn't matter at that stage, right? And that's where you need to work out what's the business use case, how does it line up with what we have, and what levers do we have to adjust pricing, to adjust the customer experience, to adjust what we're delivering to end users. I'm not sure how I got to have this knowledge. I am a generally curious person, so I like to understand how things work, and that includes organizations. When I start working with an organization that I've never worked with an organization in that industry, I want to try and understand how all different bits and pieces fit in together. What are the things that are going to impact the margin for that business, whether it's the gross margin or the net margin, and how is that all going to actually fit in? And what are the options that we have for making things better for our organization? And one of the things that's really interesting for me on that is that a lot of the things that make things better for an organization also make things better for the end customer. So it's really about balancing all these things together so that we are providing something that is useful to people. I really like that there's a new challenge every day. And every day we have a customer that comes to us with a new idea, or we come up with a new idea that we're telling the customer that we want to do. And then having to work out how we're going to do that, making sure it works, and then actually delivering on that. Learning. I think one of the most important things you can do in your career is be passionate about learning. And if you ever find yourself in a job where you go, you know what, I haven't learned anything recently, then it's time for you to move on and find a new role. Or tell your manager that you need to learn something new. More than anything, or as a new developer, your ability to understand the problem that's being solved, it's what's going to make a difference. It's been the case for quite a while. Realistically, if somebody is employing you as a developer onshore, it's because you have an ability to understand something that somebody offshore may not necessarily get. That is your prime differentiator, because you are going to be more expensive. But communication is the advantage that you have. As we have more done through AI, that becomes even more important. That from your very beginning, you're able to understand what is it about this, what my employer or what my customer wants that actually I need to do, and what are the parts that are important, and what are the bits that have been left unsaid in a brief that you as a developer need to extract out. So the more you can think about that, the better your life is going to be, and the more you're going to still be able to be successful in a career as a developer. You still need to understand technology, obviously, but it's not enough to just know technology. You also have to be able to understand that need. For people who are becoming implementation partners, the technology is not as important there. We find that here instead, the key thing we need to understand is, and it's a bit different to developers, because for developers, it was like, what does the business want generally? Here, it's about actually being able to deliver specific use cases and understanding what the use case is about. If we don't have a use case, generally speaking, we're just developing things for the fun of developing things. And we see it in projects sometimes, or projects that have dragged on for a long time. We are delivering, or people have delivered a number of things, but none of it has been tied to an actual use case. We can say, if this happens, then I want the following list of actions to happen. And extracting that out of the customer is the important part.